So, everybody, this is Jenny, and she is here to share a story today with us. And we're just really ready to be able to allow ourselves to be transformed as each of you are open to do so with us. So, Jenny, what you got?
Hi,
Denise.
Hi. So, I have a few stories that I share with clients as a massage therapist. I think, people come to me, they're in pain, not just physically, but sometimes emotionally, sometimes spiritually. Life is not easy for a lot of people, and I understand that, and I respect it. And I became a massage therapist because I felt it in my heart that God had a big purpose for me. I didn't know what it was. I knew I loved helping people, but I didn't know how I was supposed to be helping people. And that was actually troubling for me because I felt this weight that I should know what it was I should be doing. And I didn't know how to get there. One night, it was very profound to me, watching a TV show about a young girl having cancer and her family's troubles going through that journey with her. And I just prayed and prayed that God would show me what it was He wanted me to do. And it probably sounds silly to think massage therapy came out of that, but I feel like He was using me as a vessel.
And it's not silly to say you are an amazing massage therapist. Laying on the table with you is a healing process, not just physically, but also emotionally and mentally for, I believe, everyone who is your client. So never let that be less than. Just saying.
Thank you. That is so nice of you. Thank you. I take what I do very seriously in that I feel like God led me to this, to what I do, for the purpose of providing a safe space for people to share if they need to, or just to feel comforted. Sometimes people go through life and maybe they don't really get human touch. Maybe they don't have a spouse, or they don't have a child or a parent or a best friend, and so I really believe in the power of human touch and how that heals people, but I also believe in feeling comforted and having a safe space to share and talk and feeling like somebody just somewhere understands anything that you're going through.
That's awesome. And you do that. God is using you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for it. It was not an easy journey, I will share. Not long after I became a massage therapist and realized I absolutely loved it, and I did oncology training, and I worked with many different people in many different ways, and I've loved every aspect of it. My family and I had a head-on collision going 60 miles an hour in a rural area in North Florida, and our car was totaled. Luckily, we had a minivan, and thank God it saved our life. And so everything stopped for a little bit. I can share with you a little bit about that story, though, that was very spiritual. The outcome has been amazing. And it just there's just a lot of angel interaction, I would say, that day. As a mom of 4 children, you obviously would never ever want anything to happen to your children. You can take the pain, but you don't want something to happen to them. And I am so grateful for that day because honestly, I took one for the team. So it was just a very difficult day, very traumatic. I had sustained a lot of injuries. My husband was able to get the kids out of the car. I wasn't able to move. Seeing them on the side of the road was devastating to me because I wanted to get to my children. But the people that luckily were outside of our car because of miles and miles of there being nothing, we just happened to wreck outside of a mom and pop store. And the people in the store just happened to know my husband's brother. So while all of our cell phones were broken, somehow they knew the phone number for my brother-in-law and were able to get in touch with him and get get his daughter's phone number, and was able to get us help to come and get the kids while I was taken to the hospital. The journey to the hospital, I remember asking God why and what and how and what was the purpose behind this and what was the lesson, so I could hurry up and figure it out so I could move on, because it was very, very painful. And I was given a few messages at that time. I actually went into the hospital and told the doctors which area of my back was broken and what my injuries were. And it was pretty much confirmed when the x-rays came back. So whether that's me being a massage therapist or whether that's actually God telling me, I don't know. But to me, there was just a lot of coincidences that day. The lady that actually was holding my legs up for me because my back was broken outside of the car ended up coming to the hospital and stayed with me for the day because my husband had to take care of the kids and deal with the car and all the things.
And you didn't even know her?
No. She came. She was actually a volunteer at that hospital in Tallahassee. And she found me there, and she came and she sat with me. She said, I know you have no phone, and your husband can't be here right now, so I'm going to sit with you, and I'm going to be your advocate. So there was just so many miracles that happened there. A week later, I was able to come home and was basically told, you'll never work again. So probably just file for, disability. And you'll never massage again, and it'll probably take you a good year before you can walk properly. And that whole thing changed my life. I remember my husband looking at me and saying, don't listen. That's not who we are.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what, you're right. You're absolutely right. Because if I let this feed me, then I will never do those things again.
Right.
And I made it a challenge, like, okay, let's watch this. So I was a terrible patient. I would wait until everyone would leave the house to take the kids to school or whatever they had to do. And I would push myself to do things I probably wasn't supposed to do. But it was a challenge within myself of, could I do this? Life, I call it view from the couch, was not the life that I wanted to live. Not really being able to do anything for myself for quite some time was horrible and a mental disaster waiting to happen. And you find yourself in a daily pity party of, why is this happening to me? 3 spinal fractures. We had broken 4 ribs, or broke 7 ribs, snapped 4.
Wow.
It was sticking in my lung. I was just, there's pain. If you've had children without medication, it's a mental game. You have children, push through, you know that any moment you're going to have this baby and then it's going to be over and it's not going to hurt anymore. And so you go into this mental area of your brain where you're like, push through, push through, push through. Well, you can only do that for so many days before you can't do it anymore. And because there is no end to the pain just doesn't stop. And it's exhausting. And I'm not a pain medication person. Pain medicine makes me very sick, and there's no nice way to throw up when you are taking pain medicine and you have broken back. So that's just not for me. Plus I had little kids, Right. I wanted to still be present for them. I couldn't sleep in my bed, so we had to kind of turn the couch into like a hospital bed with all the pillows. I could only sit or lay in certain, that was it. So the view from the couch was not the view that I wanted my life to be. And what's interesting as a parent of a lot of kids, or maybe just even one kid, is you get to hear life going on around you. And you hear interactions, and you hear how people get triggered, and you start to see your children in a different way because you can hear the sensitivities that come out of them rather than you're part of it, if that makes sense. Like when you have a lot of children and your kids are busy, 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 and you might be more reactive to what is happening to them, maybe not as sensitive to their needs per se. It was very interesting to hear interactions between the kids or family, and I was able to have a whole new perspective. It was like being a fly on the wall in my life. It definitely changed my perspective on who I wanted to be as a parent, on how I wanted to parent, how I wanted to interact with my children, how I wanted to empower them in life, how I wanted to create something really positive out of this situation.
Wow, that's
Let this
huge.
be my life, you know, like
Right.
it was a daily, like this is not going to be my life. And I remember one day a client had come over and brought me a gift, which was so, so sweet of her, and I love her dearly to this day. And this is 10 years ago. She brought me a beautiful diary, journal. And it was teal, and it had a peacock on it, and it had gold and jewels, and it was just beautiful. And at the time, my mind would go into dark spaces throughout the day because, again, pain is very real, and it's very difficult to endure day after day. And so when I had this beautiful journal, I looked at it and said, this is too beautiful to write anything negative in. And I was a journaler big time back then. So.
That's cool.
And every day was, you know, this sucks and this is horrible and I can't believe this is my life and, you know. And I remember just being very overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift and the beauty of the book and thinking, you know what? This is going to be my gratitude journal. And I'm going to change this game. I'm going to allow myself 1 hour a day when I feel it coming on to have a pity party. And I'm allowed to cry, and I'm allowed to be mad, and I can write mad things, and I can feel all of those feelings for 1 hour. I get 1 hour.
That's
And then
awesome
after
to give yourself a
that-
time limit. Like, I've never heard of that before.
Well, you know, I've worked in chiropractic. I've worked with people that have had a lot of traumatic experiences, car accidents, different types of traumas. Pain is not a friend to anybody.
Right.
It puts you in a dark space. It does not make you feel good. It does not make you feel happy. Your interactions aren't happy. How you talk to people isn't happy. You're not happy. And if we allow that to take over our day every single day, you can imagine what your life can turn into be. And you can see how people could go down the wrong path as far as maybe turning to things to take that pain away, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's opioids, whatever that is, I can see how that can happen. I can, you know, and I'm not here to judge anybody. For me, and it's something I do share with a lot of patients, was how that just having that gratitude journal changed everything for me. Because what I learned, and I read afterwards, searching, and I love listening to podcasts and different motivational things, is that you cannot have negative thoughts while you're feeling gratitude.
That's good.
Like it's impossible. So the way to change your energy, how you're feeling, and you know when you're consumed by that dark space, is to think about all the things that are good. And it can
be
be
thankful.
really small things, because sometimes nothing feels good. Sometimes absolutely nothing feels good. And it's hard to put yourself in a space where something feels good. For me, I would, after my 1 hour pity party, I then would write in my gratitude journal, and I had to write 10 things I was grateful for. It could be, I am grateful for a pillow. I'm grateful for air conditioning. I am grateful for running water because I did not have to put a bucket on my head and walk 10 miles to get it. I am grateful for, gas in the car, even though I didn't have a car at the time. I was grateful for the rental car that my husband had so he could drive the kids to school. That was really great. We didn't have to worry about that. You start to look at things differently. I'm grateful that, I can move my feet and my legs and my arms. I'm grateful that my children weren't hurt in the car accident. I'm grateful that I have a husband and a mom and mother-in-law to help me. I'm grateful that I had friends. People brought food to our house for a month. A month. We did not have to cook a meal for a month.
What a blessing.
It was like being at your own funeral. I mean, it was absolutely amazing, and it totally changed the trajectory of my life because not only was I feeling so grateful and the blessings of it, it also made me want to give in a way that I'd never felt before. As soon as I could, it was all about like, okay, well, what can I do to help other people going through something? What can I do? Okay, can I volunteer at the kids' school? The teachers were sending me pictures of my kids at school and saying, hey, we're having a great day today. Hope you're doing okay.
That's incredible.
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Even when I was in the hospital in Tallahassee and my kids were here in Newport Richey, there was so much outpour of love that I had never, ever dreamed of or expected. And it just made me want to give back so much. So, in fact, after is when I came to Generations because we were going to a different church in Tampa and I couldn't sit in the car for that long. So we found Generations and we started a church home there for quite a while. And our kids loved it. And everything changed in our lives from this. So for some people, I think you go through life and something, terrible happens like that. It is a terrible, I would never wish to go through it again, trust me.
Of course.
But to see what came from it, to how it profoundly changed my life, how it then, the ripple effect of that, you can kind of see sometimes how things are necessary in your journey in order for you to learn the things you have to learn to get to where God wants you to be. And so, never a failure, always a lesson.
Right.
I always try to look for what was the lesson? What was this about? And it's helped my children learn, things in a different way. It's helped my husband, obviously he had to change jobs and stay home with me because I wasn't able to do what I needed to do for our family. And, it put us in a rough situation for a little bit, but teamwork, and we went from an amazing romantic cruise the month before for our first vacation in years, as parents of 4 kids. We didn't get to do that very often, to him having to shower me, shave my legs, sit me on a toilet. I mean, it's nothing more romantic than having your husband sit you on a toilet. Let me tell you that. I was like, this is not my life. This is not my life. But
you got to know each other really well.
We got to know each other really, really, really well. But the thing is, maybe not at the time was I super grateful for that because that did not make me happy that he had to do that for me. But as the years progress, you realize, wow, that's an amazing thing for somebody to do for you. Right,
he loves you so much.
And love you even when you're not very lovable, because trust me, there were times I was not very lovable, and that's teamwork, because you're going to go up, you're going to go down, and we pull each other up when we're down, and that's how you make it work.
I mean, that's part of the marriage vows, right?
Yes, but we don't always think we're going to go through that, especially at 36 years old, 37, you're not like, oh, guess what you get to do now, but I think having a sense of humor and realizing I was kind of gifted a timeout, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody's ever gone through that before, where you are incapacitated and you're like, oh, God put me in timeout. What'd I do? What I need to learn right now. I've said that a few times in life is if you don't slow down, God will slow you down. So
It's
sometimes
true.
we,
Yeah,
just,
absolutely.
I'm like, oh, I got put in timeout. That's for sure.
A big time.
But big timeout. But I will tell you that not just a few months later, I was able to go back to work. So,
Really?
I've really pushed myself. I met some amazing people. One of a lady that's become a good friend. She's an acupuncturist, and she was an absolute angel in my life. And I would not be working today if it were not for her.
Yeah.
And I think having learned so much about that time of how you feel, how your body feels, what it needs, I think being a massage therapist was the greatest blessing for me because I was really aware of what was happening and what I needed to do. Like, okay, so if the bones aren't working, well, then let's rehab the muscles and let's get the muscles to work until the bones heal. So let's, how can we fix this?
So God allowed you to have that knowledge before allowing you to go through this process.
Yeah,
For so many
exactly. Like
purposes.
everything was lined up the way
Yeah.
it was supposed to be. And I think having the gift of understanding at that point too, and compassion, and when you go through something, you have a better understanding of how somebody else feels. It's so relatable at that point. And being able to comfort people, then working with chiropractors and being able to go through things with them that way too, and letting them know that you're gonna be okay, we're gonna get through it, and you're being held, and I support you, I'm helping you however I can, you're safe here. If you need to cry, this is where you're safe to cry, and
That's
we get it
huge.
out, and then we do something positive and uplifting to move forward, until the next time, and just know that one day it gets to be a really good story that you get to tell.
I mean, that's huge
And
to have that experience that you can share with others so they don't feel alone. Because so many people out the box of other people may have experienced it just because they're in the moment of like trauma.
yeah, because at the end of the day, our footsteps are always going to be led. You just have to start walking,
That's good.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think that changes it a little bit when you feel stuck by life, by where it takes you sometimes, is just walk in faith. Know that whatever you decide to do, God's going to be right next to you. And if you fall off path, He'll just pick you right back up and put you right back on it.
Yep.
You just got to trust in it.
Yeah, I mean, life is a journey in itself. So if we not ready for the journey, I mean, that's a whole nother thing in itself of just being alert and knowing that God's got it. Like, if we're His babies, He's going to take care of us,
Yeah.
right?
Right, exactly. And just like, we sometimes have to put ourselves in that perspective of if your child is hurting or another
Right.
child is hurting, of course you're going to comfort them. Of
Right.
course you're going to help them and guide them and pick them back up and hug them better and dust them off and put them back on the right track. And that's what we do as parents. And so when we put it into that perspective of life, then you have to trust in that. You have to trust that, you're always going to be picked back up again. You just have to not fight it.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how different my career, my home life, my parenting, my marriage, everything changed just from that one incident in my life. And and I think once your perspective changes in life, everything will change anyway because you're not the same.
Right.
So life can either be dictated by a story that says I can't because of, or your life can be dictated by a story that says I couldn't, but I found a way in spite
Yeah.
of.
I can.
I
It
can.
is possible.
Yeah, I'm going to do it one step at a time. Bite-sized chunks is what I always say. Make it more palatable. You don't have to eat a whole week's worth of food in one day. You wouldn't want to, but you can make things bite-sized. And then a week later, it's easier. Everything's just easier. Make it small. Don't make it so big.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, looking at like a 5 or 10 year goal compared to a 1, or
Right.
even 6 months. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a huge difference to not be so
Absolutely.
overwhelmed and knowing that, yes, I can do this. Like it's,
I can.
taking walking in faith and taking those steps. We don't have to take humongous steps. It's just one
You don't have
little
to know
tiny,
today what it is you're
right,
going to do in 10 years.
right.
But if you look at yourself and say, what do I want out of my life? What
Right.
direction? What makes me happy? What kind of things could I see myself doing? And make it a game, make it fun. And the process is a lot more palatable, right? Because then you're like, now all I have to do here is this,
Right.
right?
It makes it more attainable for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look at a mountain. You can't climb a mountain in an hour, but if you really want to climb that mountain, you might get there in a week. You know, you have to see what is obtainable and realize you're not a failure because you didn't do it all right at
Right.
once,
That's
you
right.
know? And
It could be
sometimes
another
you
path you
don't
need to
know.
go down.
Well, the other thing is you don't know today the people you're going to meet in the next 10 years. You
True.
can only look at it from your perspective today. So, what if tomorrow I meet somebody that changes my life? What if, 10 years later I meet a lady that's doing interviews and wants to hear about my story?
Right. You never
I
know.
couldn't have foreseen that. I couldn't have seen how this happened, and now I'm going to be able to share some things with other people that might just help somebody feel better about where they are today. And that's what it's all about. We all go through challenges, we all go through struggles, we all have obstacles in our path. Are you going to let it stop you, or are you going to define it? Is it going to define who you are?
That's good.
When you're brought to it, what are you made of? What are you made of? Right? Isn't it like
Greatness.
this?
Greatness.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, because we're all filled with the same essence. We're all children of a higher power, of a higher being, and he's not human, he's not us. He can move mountains and he can create a whole world that we didn't know anything about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so
And that
interesting
he
how
created us.
the fact that every single hair on each of our heads is accounted for. Like, how is that even possible?
Right.
We can't even fathom like the thoughts that God has for us today.
And how individual we are.
Right. Everybody's
None of us
so
have the same
unique.
fingerprints. Is that not a miracle?
Right.
Is
That's
that not
incredible.
incredible?
Right.
And there's
That's
how many
beyond.
million of us on this planet, and none of us have the same fingerprints.
Right.
That means
Even
each of us,
twins.
even twins. That means each of us was brought here for an individual path. And you have to believe that it's important. You have to believe that you matter, and you have to believe that you're guided into fulfilling it, and that you're
That's
not
good.
alone.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
So what would you say if someone asked, what step would they take at this point in their lives after your journey you've been on? From the car accident to now, like if they're in the same
feeling low.
situation, and what would you suggest to them that would be life altering?
I think number one is accepting that it happened, because it's very difficult to accept anything in life, I think, because there's always an element of, well, why did that happen to me? We weren't at fault in our car accident. It was an 18-year-old kid. He lost control of his vehicle. He tried to get out of our way, but we were there. It wasn't time, so we T-boned. So we hit him at 60 miles an hour. Thank you, God, there was not a passenger in his vehicle, because we would have killed them. I think about that, and I think about the weight that poor kid had to live with. And we're fine, we're good, But in his mind, that could have been very, very difficult for him to push past. I mean, you're 18.
Right.
You've only been driving a couple of years. It's a terrifying thought.
And praying for the people that have affected you in that way. Praying for this guy. I mean,
I was just heartbroken for him, because I didn't, I'm a mother. I wouldn't want that for my children. And it was literally an accident. There was no intention, there was no fault, there was no blame. I understand that's not the case in a lot of situations where people have serious traumatic things happen to them, and sometimes somebody is at fault and to blame. It was intentional or careless. I think the hardest part is the acceptance of that happened. Life is being altered, and how do I move forward from here? So I would say accepting that, you don't have to necessarily understand the whys or the hows or, or how you're even going to get out of it. But number one is it happened. If we believe that everything in life happens to us for a reason or a purpose to teach us or show us something, maybe about other people, maybe about ourselves, most importantly about ourselves. For me personally, and right off the get-go, after I, made sure my children were okay, was, okay, God, what's the lesson? What did I do? What do I need to learn? Like, let me hurry up and learn it. And I think once that kind of set into my mind, like, it wasn't there to hurt me, it was there to teach me. It was there to change me. It was there to reroute me. It was there to move me to do something else. And sometimes movement is uncomfortable. And sometimes change is uncomfortable. What the caterpillar calls the end, we call the butterfly. It's not comfortable. But definitely I relate to that analogy because my life completely changed, and I did become a butterfly. Everything changed. Everything about my life changed in a really positive way.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful outcome to a very traumatic and tragic situation. And we are so grateful and very lucky and blessed that nobody was severely injured or killed in that situation. And I thank God for that every day. So my story is a little different to others, but I think my message is just that of hope. And in all things, there's hope. And hope, I think, is the driving force of humans. That's the motivation to keep going every single day of your life, no matter what's going on inside of your life. If you have hope, you can get up every day and you can put one foot in front of the other and you can do something to help somebody else maybe in that situation, and maybe you change the outcome. Maybe the ripple effect is so much more because of what you went through in your life,
That's for sure.
And that to me is what weighs on my heart a lot, is the ripple effect of everybody that I come in contact with. As a massage therapist, there's a lot of trust that goes into that. People are trusting me with their health, their healing, their help, however you choose to look at it. I take that very seriously, and I believe that God sends me the people that need the help and the healing for whatever that looks like for them. So I'm super grateful for the path that I ended up being on because of it.
Right.
And now I get to share that with others.
Yep, into the world.
Yay!
And I know you were unsure about all this, but
Oh, yeah.
and just to share a bit to everyone who may be considering sharing a story like Jenny. We were trying to do this previously, but fear set in, and the enemy tried to use this against Jenny, right? And standing from the sidelines looking in, I recognized what was happening, because we know that whenever God wants to use someone in a specific situation to help other people, the enemy will come in like a storm and try and interrupt whatever's happening. And we have to stand in the gap for other people sometime and say, no. Let me show you from the outside what this looks like and what's really going on, because the fear is there because the enemy wants to stop what God is wanting to do. And so that was our situation last week. And a lot of praying. And
It was, yeah. I was very down, actually. I felt very low. Honestly, a lot of people might be feeling this too that have talked about interviewing with you, is all of a sudden you start to feel this sense of unworthiness. Who am I to share anything? Who am I to advise anybody on anything? I'm a nobody and I don't matter.
Not true.
And I got to a very low point, honestly, with that. And then all of a sudden, after we talked about it and you kind of shared with me what you felt was happening, and then I realized I'm not going to do that. I'm going to push back even harder. If the enemy's pushing at me, then I'm going to push back twice as hard and remind him who I am.
That's right.
And
Stand up.
yeah, and so the best way for me to do that as a person is I did a bunch of service work this week and just got out of my own head, got out of any of that self-doubting talk, and just pushed back with a vengeance and just started giving as much as I could to anybody that I felt like could use a hand. And it just completely changed my energy, just like that. Again, the gratitude, just changing the energy of the situation to something positive and not allowing any negative, because once the negative starts to take hold, it's a spiral. I think as humans, once you start having that self-depreciating talk in your head, it plays like a record player over and over and
over.
And likes to tell you how awful you are as a person, and you believe it, and it makes you feel pretty crap. Not gonna lie. So it's really important to take a step back, kind of see it from the outside, like you were saying, and realize that, you know what, you do have 100% control over that, because you can cut that talk out, rewrite it with something else. I don't have to be perfect, but I have good intentions.
Right.
Maybe that's your mantra every day. Today, I'm going to make today just a little bit better for somebody else, because I don't want somebody else to feel the way that I feel sometimes.
Right. That's good.
Maybe that's your mantra. Maybe it's, I can't change the world, but maybe I can change the world for one person today.
Right.
It doesn't have to be anything big. Maybe it's a smile, maybe it's a kind note, maybe it's a card, maybe it's a text message that says, I thought of you today.
Yes.
It's anything that you can do to change whatever energy you're feeling to something positive. Maybe you go for a walk, maybe you pick a flower, maybe you sit in the sunshine for 5 minutes and just appreciate that moment, that quiet moment.
Well, that in itself, just being in nature in itself,
Yeah,
can change everything in your mind in an instant.
absolutely.
You know, I mean, just the thankfulness that you feel from being in existence, like it's reflecting, like you were saying about the journal. It's the same thing. Whenever you're in these situations, stopping and saying, just like shutting the world down in your own mind for a minute and saying, God, I'm so thankful for the sunshine. I'm thankful for the grass. Like, I'm thankful for breath in my lungs.
Absolutely. I'm thankful I don't have to tell my heart to beat every day, because that would not end well for me.
Right.
If I had to tell my heart to beat and my lungs to breathe and walk and talk and do all the things at the same time, there's no way. There's absolutely no way any of us could do this. So there's a lot of trust that goes into life every single day. We trust that these things are going to work without us having to tell them to do that. So, you can break it down to the smallest little thing to be grateful for something,
Right.
It really is when you stop and pause. And I think that's the biggest thing, is pausing. Like I said, I was given a big godly timeout, but we can give ourselves little timeouts throughout the day.
It's necessary sometimes.
You need it, especially when you have little kids. We need a mommy timeout. I have bigger kids. I don't need as much timeout now. They're pretty good kids, so I'm lucky. But when they were little, I remember feeling like just so overwhelmed at times. So sometimes you need a little mommy timeout to just pause and take a breath and remember what you're doing and remember why you're doing it and remember that they're little. It goes quick.
Yeah, it's so important because, I've heard so many times recently that it's okay to not feel selfish in those moments or guilty for wanting that.
Hugely. Actually, I heard a really good thing one day recently, and it was like a light bulb went off in my brain. Because we always hear about giving from your cup. If your cup's, you can't give from an empty cup. And I can't remember where I read it, but it said, if you're giving from your cup, you're doing it wrong. You need to be giving from the saucer under the cup.
I'll overflow.
You're giving from the overflow. And that's what that meant, was that you have so much in your cup overflowing and overflowing and overflowing that your cup is still full, but you're able to give what's left over from your full cup. Because I know if my cup is full of crap, I don't want to give that to everybody.
Right.
Right? So what's in your cup is just as important as not having anything in your cup. So that's another important thing to look at, is what are you giving to everybody? You know, and they say if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. And that is so true, because, you know, self-care isn't selfish. Self-care is extremely important, because what comes out of your mouth is really important to your children, to your friends, to your family.
Well,
and
especially,
you get to decide the day for other people too.
Right. Well, this, you know, I don't know if you've ever read the book, Five Love Languages. But, you know, the words of affirmation, if someone's, you may not know the love language for each person, but if someone's love language is words of affirmation, then what you speak to them, like, fills their love tank so much.
Yeah,
and it's an incredible value that they hold in you to be able to do that for them and help them in that situation and in life in general.
Definitely. I mean, everybody wants to feel validated. I remember, you know, with having the 4 daughters and them being young, there were many times at night I would go to sleep and I would run through a list of all the things I did wrong that day. Well, I don't know about you, but not many people can fall asleep when they're telling themselves how awful they are. So then you're not really sleeping. So then you take all of that to the next day. So it just continues on and on and on. So I started changing the record player of self-sabotage and saying, okay, I'm going to give myself 5 things I did right today. And tomorrow's another day, so I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm just going to work harder tomorrow at being better. Because once you know better, you can do better, right? So, I mean, it's good that you're self-assessing, but you can't just be stuck in that either. You have to move forward from it and acknowledge that you're doing the best you can and that your intentions are always good and that hopefully you're doing a good enough job. We all have those feelings of, you know, not being good enough, not fitting in. So helping people to realize that what they bring to the table is very important in this life and that it all meshes together to make this great melting pot. Nobody wants to open a box of crayons and they're all the same color and the same size and, you know, do the same thing.
Absolutely
we all
not.
have to bring something to that picture. So we're all allowed to be a little different. And however you choose to get there, that's part of the fun. That's part of the journey. But it's all going to be different. And because it's all different, then we get to share each story with each other. And that makes a beautiful picture.
It's incredible how God just brings people together at different points to be able to be that.
Yeah,
I love that thought of the coloring page being all different with the box of colors. That's a really good way to look at it, because that's the basics of how it is, you know?
Yeah, we're all different, and that's what makes it beautiful, and that's okay. You don't have to be the same as anybody else.
You know, that's really a good way for even a young child to view life in itself, you know, to share that illustration or thought with them so that they can start seeing that even as, you know, a 4-year-old. They don't have to wait until they're 24 to be able to recognize that there's value in me.
Value, beauty, drive, ambition. I don't know how to plumb a toilet. My husband does. I don't know how to do electrical. I don't know how to do a lot of things in this world. Don't even ask me about computers. It's definitely not in my wheelhouse. But there's people that do. And then there's people that do my job. And there's people that are doctors, and there's people that are nurses, and there's people that do other things. And that everybody's equally wonderful, because together we all make the world work.
True, yeah.
So they have to show love and respect to every individual for what they bring to the melting pot, to the stew of life.
Your words are funny. Different thoughts for sure. I love that, though.
Well, thank you, Denise. I love you. I
Love you
appreciate
too.
you.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I hope you have an amazing day.
You too, lovely.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.